All right, y'all. Welcome to another podcast of the Coastal Wave Podcast, coming to you live from the
second floor of the Berkshire Hathaway Myrtle Beach real estate building here in sunny Myrtle Beach. Man, is the weather nice out there.
I tell you what, we have some very special guests with us today. First of all, we have our Congressman, Mr. Russell Fry.
Yay!
And we have Marvin Hyde. We all side with the Hyde.
We all the OG.
Thank you.
The OG. We have Deborah Fortin in the building. Chris Murphy as always. And we are just so thankful to have you here today, Russell. And thank you for coming. Let's start this cast off by you telling us a little bit about yourself. And when I say that, how did you get into politics and get into from the State House to Congress, and just tell us a little history on yourself.
Yeah, that's great. First of all, thanks for having me. This is awesome. The studio's great. The vibe's good. Like you can't go wrong when you start off with a little bit of Dave in the morning. Politics it's strange. But look, I'm a child of 9/11. I think a couple things shaped me just as a kid. One, I had great parents that were a great foundation. We lived through, I was here in Myrtle Beach, but we saw 9/11 at an early age, and just that rally around the flagpole effect that really captivated the country and unified us. And the third was the Boy Scouts, and Marvin knows a little bit about that, because Marvin was actually at my Eagle Scout ceremony when I was a kid.
We were very proud of you.
But I think that those three things really pushed a commitment to public service, and I think that's probably the foundation, if I had to say, of my passion for public policy.
What was the first office that you ever ran for?
State House, special election in the middle of summer. Lost a lot of weight because I was walking neighborhoods all the time, and that was in 2015. 29 years old.
Wow!
Well, thank you for that, by the way.
And as your term within the State House, tell us kind of what positions that you were in. I know there was a whip position. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I was the chief majority whip for the House Republicans for about 4 years, which is a fancy title for herding cats. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of what you did. But anytime a bill came to the floor of the House, I had to make sure that the trains were running on time, that no one was doing a crazy amendment to throw off a really good bill, stuff like that. So particularly on big issues that the caucus was focusing on, tax cuts, whatever we may have done. That was the drive, was to make sure that we didn't disrupt it too bad, and that we were able to pass it in the end.
What was it like working in the State House?
That was great. I mean, the people are awesome. I do miss them a little bit, and just the colleagues, the friendships that you make. You've got a lot of people who really want to do the right thing for South Carolina. They're not always right, but they at least have that desire to make this a better state. So you got some really good people that work in Columbia.
Is that a big difference between Columbia and Washington?
Oh, such a big difference. Washington is a strange place, full of strange people, and it's almost like it's not real. If I disagreed with you in the State House, we might disagree on how to fix a problem, but at least we can agree, one, that there's a problem, and two, maybe the facts around the problem.
Okay.
In Washington, they kind of create their own alternate reality. And it's just baffling to see. My first hearing, I was so excited. I'm sitting there, and I get to the Judiciary Committee, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I've got my nameplate right there on the front. And I look up, and there's the flag, and there's all these people there in the press, and we start off on a debate on whether we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance before every. I mean, it's just crazy.
Wait. Say that again.
There was a debate about whether we would say the Pledge of Allegiance before every Judiciary Committee meeting. We did that for an hour. It was just so.
How'd it turn out?
Well, in the end, this is the funny thing. All the people who were objecting to saying the Pledge of Allegiance ended up voting for the amendment. Because they didn't want to be seen as not supporting the pledge. But we literally had a debate about whether it was appropriate to say the Pledge of Allegiance before a
what was
federal
their
committee
argument?
here. that we do this on the floor and we didn't need to do it twice in a day, and just stuff like that. It was just silly, stupid stuff. And you know what? People see that, and that's the frustration. I think that moment is the frustration that the American people have toward Washington. Just that disconnect.
You know, Russell, we typically people eat 3 meals a day. You eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And here in the South, or for us at least, we always say the blessing every meal. So the notion of not saying the Pledge of Allegiance is almost like the blessing.
Right.
And we never deviate from that. You know, you got to thank,
Yeah.
you know, the folks and thank God for everything that we've done. And
Just have some kind of tradition.
yeah.
Right? And so is that a new thing that they're attacking the Pledge of Allegiance, or?
I don't know. It was just weird. I was just stunned that we were even having this conversation.
Right.
Because to me, that's just so basic. I mean, it's almost. I mean, you do this every day when you go to school. I mean, you grow up doing this. You go to a football game. You say the Pledge of Allegiance. It makes sense that one of the oldest committees in the House of Representatives, that really kind of prides itself as you know, a focus on the law and who we are as a country, that we would say that. And to me, it was just shocking that we would even have that debate.
Sure.
What are the motives? Like, what do you think? Is their motives the voters, or is their motives really just a detest for the flag and the country?
I don't know. It's weird. And then right after that, the ranking member made a comment that we were imagining a border crisis, right? So again, you just...
Oh, wow.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
so when your own side at this point, talking about the other party, when they are attacking the administration's response to the border, and you've seen this with Kristen Sinema, you've seen this with Joe Manchin, you've seen this with a whole host of Democratic policymakers. You know, most recently the New York City mayor and the governor, and all these people criticizing the administration. You know that like there's really something wrong, and to say that we are imagining it. Look, 300 Americans die every single day from fentanyl poisoning.
Man.
You know,
Let me back it up one more time real quick, because I do want to jump into all this, but I do want the folks that are going to watch this and everybody to know who Russell Fry is. And how long were you in the State House?
7 years.
7 years. What was the tipping point that you wanted to run for U.S. Congress?
Well, I think you know, my predecessor voted to impeach the president without due process, without a hearing, without really any normal, normal impeachment behavior if you're going to go down that route. And I think that was the sign that it was time to stand up and object to that, and that we were going to run. And I was comfortable with certainly winning because I decided to run, but I was also comfortable with putting up a fight, and even if I lost, putting it out on the table.
And how many people were in that race? Because there was a lot of them.
Oh gosh, what was it? I mean, originally it was like 14. It whittled down to about 7 in the end.
And this is probably one of the first times that I've seen in an area within politics. So typically, when you have that many people running for the same office, there's a runoff.
Right.
Right? And you happen to win without a runoff, did you not?
I did. That was crazy.
And what did you think about that when I happened to be there?
Yeah.
And for like, that's astonishing to think about it when you have so many people running from the same office. And what was the percentage that you had to have without a runoff?
You had to have 50% plus 1.
51%. So, and at the end of it, was it 4 or 5 people?
It was 7 total.
7 total.
And they were good people.
Mm-hmm.
You got 51% out of 7 people
Correct.
of the vote
Correct.
that you did not have to have a runoff.
No, and it was wild. You think about this, and I can't remember where I heard this. It was one of the, I'd say 24-hour news folks, but there was a stat that said not since, you know, the 1990s has an incumbent congressman lost with less than 25% of the vote in a primary.
I mean, that's...
Well, the county rallied, man.
Oh,
we
yeah.
were embarrassed, I can tell you that.
No, it was wild, and there were 7 people, and like to your point, you start talking math.
Yeah.
And you've got to get 50% plus 1 to avoid a runoff. Out of 7 people, that's just hard to do.
Yeah.
But we had a great team, with a great movement. I mean, you just kind of felt like it was working. And despite being outspent 4-1,
Yeah.
we were able to do that. That's just
There was a lot of phone calls.
Oh, yeah.
I know I made a bunch of them.
Yes, you did.
How many pairs of shoes did you go through?
A decent amount. I always knock on doors. Even at that level, if you're in the state house, Marvin's run for public office before, so
Sure.
you put those shoes on and you wear out that shoe leather. Even for Congress, they're like, maybe you don't need to knock on doors. I said, I'm in my element when I'm on somebody's front porch.
Yeah.
They don't expect me to come up. You knock on the door, you're probably there for 20 minutes, but in the end, that person's going to most likely support you and just get you out in the field. I think that's always healthy.
Yeah. It's been a good ride, with watching you come up from. And I think we were in Young Republicans together many years ago. I mean, I'm going back dating ourselves.
How long ago was that?
I mean, this is 20
20 years
five
ago?
something. I mean,
It was a while.
It
ago.
was a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I remember, what was the gal that was trying to run it? Brittany, or what was her name?
Yeah, Britain. I can't remember. her last name.
Britain something. But
Yeah.
anyways, we were all
Railing around
growing
her.
up together, and a lot of them, from Cam Crawford to Heather Emmons Crawford, and, everybody's they're elected folks.
Not
And-
everyone.
Well, not everybody needs to be. and so, but you have this great generation of up and comers, and I believe that Russell, I've always supported you that this is the next generation, because I think they had some stats out. We have the oldest Congress and Senate that we've ever had, with the average age of 60, 70.
Is that true?
Something like
That's
that.
probably true.
Wow.
It really is. And then you got a lot of folks that are out there, and there comes a point that there has to be a changing of the guard. And in politics, there's no term limits. And so you have to have tenure to have your positions, right?
Oh, Russell got some positions right away.
And let's go to that. So we came up, Marvin and I came up and saw you in Washington, all right? So we were proud, our guys there, and what happened for 4 days?
Oh my gosh. Well, I didn't expect that when I got there that I would, you're supposed to get sworn in. The first thing you have to do in any new Congress is you elect a speaker, and then you get sworn in. So for 5 days we didn't have a speaker, so therefore we weren't able to get sworn in, and so we were there forever. In fact, when y'all were up there was. My team and I were having a debate about whether I could leave for an hour and a half and then come back, because they were doing the votes by alphabetical order, one at a time. And so I said, how long is it going to take to get from Fry back around to Fry? And it was about 2 hours. And I said, maybe I have a little bit of time, if we're still going to go, to run over there real quick, say hi to everybody, and then come back. Fortunately, I think we adjourned that day. But it took 5 days, and on Friday at 2 a.m, I think we got sworn in.
Wow. What was that like as your first
must have been
experience in
awesome.
Washington?
I loved it. I mean, look, I think we ended up being in a healthy place. I mean, everyone was looking at the dysfunction, but I actually thought it was good because we were able to rally around a set of rules that the House is going to be governed by, which I think enable new members like me to have a voice on the House floor, to be able to propose amendments to bills that I might not like or want to fix. So I think in a lot of ways it actually was a healthy thing. It took a while to get there. The trains were definitely not on time that week, but in the end, we selected a speaker, we got our rules, and we got sworn in, and then we were off to the races.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So we're here in Washington now. Tell us about your first, a year and a half?
That's what I was going to say, man. You're a freshman, but you weren't a quiet freshman.
No.
So what was these big things you were working on there?
Well, let me back up to this. You were elected as the freshman.
President of the freshman class.
And how did that work out? And like, how
How'd you
does
pull it
that?
off?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was a whip, and so you have to count votes. That's kind of your job, is to count votes, make sure you got everything right. And we were talking as a team, kind of leading into it, and I said, you know what? I'm not hearing a lot of chatter about this position. I think we could do this. We did this a little bit at the state house level, where we tried to help, train the new, the new people that just got elected to the state house. Let's go in this. Let's try to benefit the class, make us more effective. And so we did. And I had an opponent originally, and we talked a little bit. He was still going to run, and that's fine. And so we just called people, I would say whipped the vote, and got to know the freshman class. And I was, in my mind, if I won, great. If I lost, at least it gave me an opportunity to meet people, to talk to people, to forge those relationships. You're going to be serving, or I'm going to be serving with, a lot of these folks for years. And so to get to know them, to get to know their families, I think that's just important stuff. And so we had fun with it, and it worked out in the end.
Now, what does that all entail? Being the new freshman president of, what does that all entail?
It's like being the whip. It's herding cats all over
It's
again.
the same, right?
But what we try to do is we try to bring us together. So we'll host social events and things like that. We try to communicate and keep communication open. How can we be helpful? We'll put together. I think the most important thing we do is we'll bring in people. Say somebody wants to talk about how to communicate effectively on social media. So we'll bring in like a professional person to give tips or tricks of the trade, so to speak, and ethical rules, like what to do and not to do, things like that. Just basic stuff that you don't always what are the rules on the house floor and how do they work? How do you not put your foot in your mouth when you're on the floor of the house. Those are like some of the, I would say, the classes, if you will, that we've had for our freshmen.
Nice.
So your experience came into play big time there.
A little bit, yeah.
And you've got another election coming up?
Yeah. We're in the house. We're every 2 years. And the founders were brilliant about that, keeping you close to the people, keeping you back home as much as possible. So we announced, I think, earlier this week that we're running again. You're constantly in a state of running, seems like.
I think after 2 years for sure.
But we've got a primary in June, if there's a primary, and a general election in November. So we just wanted to put that out there that, for next year when the time comes up, I will be signing up. I will be running again. And
we'll be here to help, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in Washington since you've been there. And there is a lot of stuff that's been going on, from Hunter Biden to Donald Trump.
Is anything true?
It's
a lot of it's true. Yeah.
well, but tell me, what has been something that you would say, man, this just blew my mind?
Well, that's the strange thing. You talk about what's true, and when you delve into these like reports, I'll take the Durham report as an example. This actually opened up my mind a lot. We've heard for years, and the Durham report, to back up, John Durham was a special prosecutor who was appointed to look into the Trump campaign alleged collusion with Russia and all the things that happened because of that, all the missteps. And what came out of that was a 300-page report that blew my mind, where you had federal agents who ignored protocols, ignored tripwires and things and investigatory tools that they had at their disposal, and they allowed their distaste for Donald Trump to color an investigation. And what happened is you had the Steele dossier. So Christopher Steele was a foreign agent. He was hired by the Clinton campaign to produce this document that said that Donald Trump and the Trump campaign had ties to Russia and they were helping him. And they used that paid-for document to get FISA warrants. FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So they used that to get warrants out to spy on a presidential campaign. And it was all paid for by the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign. And when you look at when you read this transcript and you see the actions that they take, this just didn't happen accidentally. People, they didn't like him, and they wanted to ping him with something. And so they ignored all the traditional protocols of law enforcement. And they allowed that to color their investigation, which ultimately, for years was Trump and Russia and all this other stuff. And when you read that report and you just see the things that some of these people did, it's just shocking. And that honestly blew my mind. And, I've heard about it. We've all heard about it.
But you don't know what to believe when you're watching it on TV. This is not TV.
When you peel open that that document, you're reading every single page and you're taking notes and kind of preparing for a hearing. It just blew my mind that in this country that this would even be possible. And it happens not just for presidential campaigns, but it happens all the way down to parents that want to get involved in their child's education. It happens if you're Catholic, you're labeled, according to the Richmond field office, as an extremist.
Come on.
This is just the kind of crazy stuff. And if you testify or you blow the whistle, the IRS will show up at your house, right? So this is the kind of stuff that causes me a lot of pause, because especially when we all grew up, some of these, we look at the FBI and the DOJ as the pinnacle of ethics in so many ways, and then to see these types of actions take place, it blows my mind.
I think for us as an outsider, and not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I have zero trust in the DOJ.
So it brings me
FBI, and I feel like it's all based on politics now, because there's one standard and then there's another standard. And if you look at, even with all the different cases that are going against President Trump, it's not equal to the other side.
Right.
And that goes to Hunter Biden or Joe Biden, which is another topic that we're going to get into a little bit, because I think there's some nefarious things that have happened there as well. But you don't feel comfortable with government in today's world, because you got one side, whether it's a CNN or a news station, and the opposite side, then who do you believe? Where do you get your information from?
Right.
And then as a congressperson, where would you say the most honest information comes from?
good question.
From a news source?
From a news source, whether it's X, formerly Twitter, where would you say that you think that the most honest information comes from?
Well, I think I do this a lot, but I start off with X, and you get things that happen instantly on X. I think that's a great starting point. But I always compare news stories, and I look at things in a lot of different lenses. And I think people are doing that. They're not stuck on reading the paper the same way every day, and that's the news. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They cross-reference a lot the information they're getting, and it allows them. I think that's just a smarter way to do it. Quite frankly, that's how I do it.
And the interviews are available. So, like, what I've been doing is not the news is one thing. The news brings it to our attention, right, and then we can find you guys. We can find what you're actually saying, what's actually going on. The reports are available, right? So you can read. You can start to really look at it. It's not as convenient. But I wanted to back on what he had said there, where so there's unfairness in law. It's always been, right? Your parents know the prosecutor, whatever. You get away with something someone else doesn't. But I mean, is there? I'm going to go back to my question. Is there anything truth coming out? Is there hope? Because it's depressing for a lot of people that are watching TV or watching the news and saying, "Man, nothing is real out there." There's a huge swing one way or the other. They can get away with anything. This guy can't get away with anything. How do we fix it?
I think there is hope, and I say, at least what I've seen right now, is there's a lot of people in Congress and other places that are committed to fixing the problem, and that we need true public servants that work in career, in our federal government, and that don't have a political bent, that just want to do the job. And so there's in the political realm, there's a ton of people who want to fix it, who are trying to drive to that more perfect union. So that our government is working for us and not against us. And so I'm at least encouraged, but look, we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. These things happen over a series of, Congress, maybe my frustration, one of my biggest frustrations with Congress. Congress is listed in the Constitution first, right? They're the first article. And the founders wanted it that way because we make the laws and that we're closest to the people. Yeah. So, but we have ceded, and I say we, I just got there, but for decades they have ceded control to a bureaucratic state that just runs things however they want to do it. And there's no accountability from Congress. There's no examination of their budgets. There's no trying to rein them back in. If I call a state agency when I was in the State House, I would get a call back. If I call a federal agency, maybe not, don't know. I think that's a problem, just the inability to answer basic things to help out your constituents. If they're not doing that now, and then you've got all these other things with the weaponization of the federal government, I think that's the litmus test, and they've got their budgets coming up, so we need to be looking at those.
There you go.
I think you nailed it on the head earlier. And, when you have, say you got a problem with the government, and the next thing you know, the IRS shows up at your house. Or it is just, to me, so convoluted that you can't trust these folks at this point in time. Like you literally can't. Like, what do y'all do to, how do we fix this problem? I mean, is it going to have to be because we have a new president? What is it going to take to fix the DOJ, the FBI? I mean, because they're obviously not good actors, and they're being more politicized than anything. How do we fix this?
Well, one, I think a new president will definitely help. But probably most importantly, Congress needs to start clawing back its authority, their rulemaking authority, their ability to rein in these agencies. I think you've got to examine their budgets. I think you've got to examine their programming. And if it's not working for the American people, or somebody's not doing their job, well, they need to be fired. If you don't have somebody that does a good job here in your business, well, they're out. You might try to help them out, try to get them, on their feet, but they're out. Washington, D.C. is the only place where you fail up. You do such a bad job, you get promoted to a cabinet secretary.
Seems that way.
I mean, it's just crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it really is. What do you think about the 75,000 IRS agents that they've hired?
Well, look, they will claim that it's
It's an age out.
It's to target the rich. But the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan, they study all the things that we do, all policies, and it's a great resource. They said that most of the money will come from middle-income Americans.
Wow.
That's not
targeting the rich.
And so when you see that, you hear what the administration says, and you see the actual truth, that should send alarm, bells off for every single American that the IRS would be targeting you to just go after you. And again, if you're wealthy, you have the capacity to afford lawyers and accountants and all the things. If you're just a small business owner or a family, you don't have that capacity.
No.
And you get an IRS inquiry, just somebody wants to fish around, that's a problem. And the IRS should not be in that business to doing that.
Wow. I mean,
It seems like they're put there to trying to scare people to being quiet, and I think it's working.
Yeah.
what do you think about, a lot of things are coming back, and I have my own conspiracy theories.
We all do, right?
And during the last presidential election, we had COVID, and we had a lot of mail-in ballots and a lot of things like that. And all of a sudden, COVID's coming back, and they're shutting down schools, or they're wanting masks.
Right.
And I think they even had Fauci online saying
back?
that the mask.
He's back.
Come on.
But I think he said the mask didn't work.
Right.
Right. And so there's all, and then they want another COVID shot like number 10 because the other ones Biden said didn't work.
Right.
So we want one that works. And so you got shots coming back, you got masks coming back. Do you see a shutdown coming?
No, I think people are done with it. I think.
But can the president shut it down?
Do they have the power? That's what I was going to ask. Can they even mandate this stuff, really?
Well, I think the federal, they can try, but there's going to be so many people, and states are going to be fighting them. Look, I mean, Henry McMaster, our governor, said we are not shutting down schools. We are not wearing masks. There will be no mandates. There will be none of that. And of course, he didn't do that to begin with.
That was nice,
But people are done with the shutdowns. Look, we lost a year of school for kids. We lost opportunity. People, drug use was never higher than during COVID. I mean, it was just such a disaster. So to repeat it, masks didn't work. They didn't slow the spread. People still got sick. Vaccines, you could still get it.
And then there's a lot of other issues that came along with vaccines that you took that you're starting to see from the football fields,
Right.
and different things because it was never tested.
Yeah, I think people in my mind, they are done with COVID. They want it behind them. They never want to relive that saga again. And I don't blame them. I mean, and to me, to the extent that there were ever, actions taken to shut things down, I would fight that. I think we should. I mean, we've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. It's time to move on. It didn't work, and we don't need to go down that route again.
But it does appear that they weaponize that. It's not a conspiracy theory.
No, well, COVID, we know, was used as a precursor to change, we talked about election law, was used as a precursor to change election laws to make people feel safe while they voted.
Are those laws still in place?
A lot of them were executive, and that was the problem in a lot of these states where, say, the Secretary of State for, whatever state says, hey, we're going to change election law. Well, that's not his function. If you believe in like a balance of powers approach to government, which we should, that's not his function. He doesn't make the law. If the legislature said that we're going to do this, then that's the appropriate use of the law. But when it comes from the executive where one person is calling the shot, that's the problem.
Right. That's not how the country was
Right.
set up.
Well, my concern would be that, especially, so we know Trump's going to be
Running for,
president. He's going to win hands down.
even if he's in jail.
Now, we don't know if Biden's going to be around or if it's going to be Gavin
He's
Newsom and he's going to run. But he can't walk upstairs. But
You've met this guy?
have you met him?
No.
You haven't even met him. Good for you, man.
No, you should know the man. But
I saw the State of the Union speech.
You were there for that.
Yeah, I was there for that.
So he is.
but here's my question.
Yeah, he does exist.
That's what I'm saying.
He just doesn't get
Is
out
it
of bed.
AI?
He doesn't get out of bed.
He's not AI.
It's hard to believe.
They got him up on an AI
I guess if
screen.
it was AI, they wouldn't have him falling.
Yeah. At least he could walk if he was AI. It would
Right.
probably be better if he was AI,
It
right?
depends on what they're really up to.
Well,
We'll put a hologram. But I tell you this, like, it's realistically going to come down to probably 4 states. You got Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and one more, right?
Yeah, Wisconsin.
That's what it came down to.
The same group.
And that's where we lost. So, if for any circumstance they said we're going to do all these mail-in ballots, we're going to lock you down, we're going to put it in the mask, is there any safe falls for us?
Yeah, I think so. One, it's not a federal issue. And so anytime that the federal government comes in and wants to deal with elections, your hackles should raise up. I think we can support from a security standpoint. I think we can incentivize states to go to, easy things like voter ID.
And what? Because you just said that makes 0 sense to me. Why you can't have an ID? You have to have an ID to
Do anything.
go get a drink. You have to have an ID to
Get on a
go
plane.
to the bank. You have to have an ID to get on a plane.
Yep.
And it's so blatant to me the reason that they don't want voter ID.
Right. It's so easy. And if you can't afford a $5 ID, the state of South
We'll give
Carolina
it to you.
gives you one.
Yeah.
So it's just so to your point is right. And Alan Clemens, who used to represent this area in the state house, he was around during voter ID when they did it back in the mid 2000s, I think. And I remember him telling me this story. He said they all said, if we do this, it will suppress turnout. People will not vote when they have to go buy an ID, do all this stuff. Guess what it did? It never suppressed turnout. It augmented turnout. More people voted, and they're voting, and so
They knew they could. They had the proof.
look. If you can't afford it and you want it for voting purposes, well, you get it for free. It's so easy, and it's so common sense. Most people get that, but in states that they don't have that, I think there's a reason for that.
I agree with that 100%. And it just blows my mind. And again, it goes back to, things like the border. So let's talk about the border for a second. And what are your feelings on the border where we've had all these, materials left over?
How
put to
dangerous
waste,
is this?
And we've had more border crossings than we've ever had. Am I right about that?
Right.
Ever. And when you look at like New York City, and they've gone back to, well, you have to have a vaccine if you're going to go to school. I don't know if you've heard this yet.
Yeah.
But if you're an immigrant or an illegal alien, you don't have to have one.
Right.
That's real.
Yeah.
All different types of rules. Yeah.
I mean, and like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I've been to the border. I went to Yuma, Arizona. And here's maybe some top line numbers, and then we'll get into Yuma. Since the start of this administration, 3.6 million illegal immigrants in this country that should not be here. That's known gotaways, and that's people that we have allowed to come in here without processing them. They're everywhere. They come in from everywhere. You have people on the terror watch list, I think 200, 250, somewhere in there. Under this administration, it's higher than it's ever been, of people who were apprehended at the border who were on the terror watch list. 170 countries have come through our southern border in the last 3 years. It's not just Central and South America. And look, this is a natural result. When the Biden administration came in on day one, they said, we're terminating construction of the wall. Mistake number one. 2, they said the Migrant Protection Protocols, MPP, or the Remain in Mexico policy. It was hugely successful. They said, we're not doing that anymore. They've created an app on your phone, which is the Disney Fast Pass for illegal immigration in this country. You just have to sign up, show up for your appointment on the border, and they'll send you wherever you want to go. The asylum process has been abused. They've suspended agreements with Guatemala and other countries. They abused the parole process. Parole is like if you don't fit into some sort of category, then the Secretary of Homeland Security has the ability to say, you're in kind of a weird situation and you've got a problem, maybe asylum claim, we're going to let you in.
Yeah.
It's a case-by-case basis. What this secretary has done said, well, you're from Guatemala, we're taking 30,000 of you this month or this week.
Come on.
You're from Cuba, we're taking 30,000 of you. So he's expanded that. And he sits there, he sat there in the hearing the other day, did not answer a single question from a Republican. I mean, he couldn't even answer whether he locks his own door at night.
And he did.
Are you talking about the president?
I'm talking about the Secretary of Homeland Security. Alejandro Mayorkas.
He should be impeached.
Yeah, he should be. And at the very basic level, he's not even doing his job. When you go to Yuma and you talk to farmers, ranchers, a hospital system that said the last 6 months of 2022 they had $26 million in uncompensated care that they provided to illegal migrants. That's just crazy. Like, no. And they said, look, we're going to take care of anyone who comes through our door. That's the mission of the doctor's office or a hospital. But that business model is unsustainable. And if they close, they are the only hospital between Los Angeles and Phoenix, Arizona.
It's the only one.
Only one.
Wow.
Do you ever think anything like this was going to happen, Marv?
No, this is incredible. I mean, it's hard. You don't even recognize our country anymore. But we appreciate you being there in Washington, D.C. and doing all you're doing.
Yeah, we're trying. We're trying to fix it.
I tell you, what are your thoughts as Governor Abbott is shipping them to New York City?
That was kind of humorous, man.
And now they're asking from the governor and the federal government for this relief. Now, Texas has had the biggest stress on them than anybody.
Sure.
But now that he's, there's so many here and there, and now they're kind of tripping out.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts to that?
Did it slow it down?
Poetic justice.
Right.
Look, when everybody, first of all, I hate virtue signaling. So when they're out there and like, yeah, we're a sanctuary city or we're a sanctuary state, we're not going to work with ICE, and we're not going to address illegal immigrants in our city or state, and they all do this. And now that the governor of Texas and Florida and others are sending them, all right, you're sanctuary, then here you go. And now they're freaking out. And you just have to laugh and go, this is the problem. When you try to play gimmick policy on real serious issues, this is the natural result. And they had it coming. And I hate that. But they're starting to criticize for the first time this administration. Well, yeah.
Doggy
they
dog.
don't have the benefit of living, hundreds of miles away and saying, we stand with you. We stand with the president. Well, now you're a border state too. We're going to send you the migrants. So good for Governor Abbott.
That's right.
Now this affects everybody, but on a micro level, like say right here in our county here, How much does this immigration and what is it all doing to our economy? Like the Biden administration right now.
Well, it's bad. Look, 300 Americans die every single day from fentanyl poisoning, right? So it's just an astronomical figure. It's laced in all these different things. It's in rural communities. It's in urban centers. It's everywhere. And so you feel it every single day in this community when people overdose and they go to Grand Strand Hospital or they go to Tidelands or wherever. People are living this reality, and it's coming across our southern border. And the cartels are smart. First of all, we're propping up the cartels because you don't go through northern Mexico without going through their turf.
Sure.
And
they're tougher than us at this point.
And they'll pick you up and they'll say, hello, Mr. Person from Russia or China or wherever you're from. We're going to take you to the border. We're going to give you clean clothes and shelter and food and water. And when you get there, you're going to give this paperwork to the Border Patrol, and they're going to send you anywhere you want to go. And in exchange for that safe passage to the border, you owe us $5,000 or $8,000. Wow. And if you can't pay it, well, that's okay. We'll tell you where to go when you get in the United States, and you can work off your debt. So labor, like labor smuggling, human smuggling, this is all, we have propped up the cartels. And it's become, I think, a $17 billion industry for the northern Mexico cartels. It's
wow.
That's so much money.
You know, and you don't hear this type of stuff on the news.
Right.
I mean, and again, it goes back to the misinformation, and because you don't know what's the truth and what's not.
It's hard to trust anything.
Yeah. And going back to why I love that Elon Musk purchased Twitter, now X, is that, you know, hell, I think they just went after SpaceX, the federal government,
right?
Because he's allowing for free speech. And what are your thoughts on Mr. Musk?
Well, I think he did a great job. I think Twitter is back to look, social media is the marketplace of ideas now. Mm-hmm. It's today's version of the public square where you can talk how you want to talk, that you can express your viewpoints. And the first thing that he did when he took it over was he released all the internal emails from Twitter executives, which showed that the federal government was basically using Twitter as a means to suppress free speech, and not just for Americans, not just for conservatives, really everybody. And you just have to wonder, look, if you're in law enforcement and there's a bad actor in a house and you can't get a warrant, you can't hire a private security firm to do what you otherwise can't do. That's a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Sure.
And so the same thing goes for this, is that you can't use resources from the federal government to suppress speech, the First Amendment rights of American citizens, when you otherwise can't do that. There was an opinion that came out of Louisiana recently, and it's a huge opinion, but it took to task these federal agencies that engage in that conduct, because they're doing it. I mean, 170-page opinion, I think it was. I don't know if that was the exact count, but it's pretty lengthy. And they took to task these agencies that they're suppressing speech all the time, and it's unconscionable. It's not who we are. And the choice that we have to make is the Constitution a suggestion box, or is it the Constitution? And these agencies have treated it like a
suggestion box all the way.
Yeah. Well, like someone like you, Russell, we can get a feel for what your motivation is, right? The American family, the United States of America, all our pride, and just the best place, the best country in the world for how many years? For a very, very long time. What is the motivation of these Twitter executives? Why would they want to suppress free speech? What is it?
And it goes for Meta.
Yep.
It goes for, I think that's big.
It can't be money corporate, because there's lots of money on both sides.
Well, they were getting money. So we were paying these social media companies to cooperate with the United States government.
Okay, so the United States government was paying the social media companies to cooperate with them.
Yeah.
And what motivates the DOJ to do that?
Well, look, I mean, they were going after COVID stuff. They were doing this, but you have, look, the suppression. I would give you this, like COVID. So they did the COVID misinformation. But meanwhile, there's a ton of doctors out there who are, Harvard graduates and all this stuff, had different opinions than the status quo or the mainstream, and they should be able to express that. People should be able to listen to that. But beyond that, you look at like the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
That's the stuff I'm talking about.
They did that, and they said it looks like misinformation, this and that and the other. This is right before an election, and after the election, I'm trying to remember the exact poll, what it said, but I think it was like 17% or so of people who voted for President Biden would have switched their vote if they knew about that story.
That should have been enough anyway.
That was election interference, and we've seen that in 2016 with the Durham report. We've seen that in 2018. We've seen that in 2020.
Are we going to see it in 2024?
Let me ask you this: is it? And I may be wrong about this. Is it Article 14 when it comes down to Trump, where the Secretary of State could pull him off the ballots if he is criminally prosecuted?
Yeah, so they're using the 14th Amendment.
14th Amendment
says that, if you're engaged in insurrection, you're barred from public office. But the problem is he's never been charged with that. He's never been convicted of it.
But he never did it.
Well, he could be, but again, you're not convicted of, you're innocent until proven guilty. And so, look, what I fear in what I'm seeing is the weaponization of federal and state resources to politically prosecute your opponents.
Yeah.
You saw this tremendously in South America, in some of their coups and some of their, revolutions. This is not who we are. It's never been who we are.
Never been.
The president, if you watch the Tucker interview with the president of Hungary the other day, he said, you see this in communist regimes. This is where you see it. And he's lived that. He was the one, when Hungary kind of escaped from under the umbrella of the Soviet Union, he was part of that. And obviously is the president of the country now, but he said you don't see that in this country, and to see America do that, it's kind of a dangerous place for us to be.
It worries me tremendously,
Yeah.
and I just feel like the writing's on the wall that it's going to happen.
Well, is it? That's what is there a silver bullet here?
I don't know how it doesn't happen, and that's where I guess as an average American person, as we look at it, we're like, all these cases that are brought against the former president are it's so blatant, it's political.
But we like to believe we're too big to fail.
And every time that something comes about Hunter, Trump gets charged.
Yeah.
What I mean? Every time.
Kind of convenient timing.
I mean, every single time. And it's like, how do you stop it? What's our safe falls? How are we protected?
Well, I think, first of all, at least with the 14th Avenue, one of those has already been shut down. I think it was in Florida. I suspect a lot of states are going to go there, and I suspect if it doesn't, the Supreme Court will wade in. But again, he's never been charged. That they've never charged him with that. And look, we have to be vigilant. We have to keep fighting back. There's enough people who are waking up to this kind of stuff. And saying this is not who we are, this is unacceptable, particularly when you compare, like you just talked about, one side based on your political views with what happens to the other and who you are and who your family is. People naturally reject that. I saw a poll the other day. Most Americans believe that Joe Biden was involved in his son's business.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I mean, and
isn't it documented?
As much as they want to, cloud it up, as much as they want to not talk about it, especially the media, most Americans are smart. They're waking up and they see this stuff. So they see it for what it is. So it's frustrating that you see these actions in our government. It's frustrating that the media won't do its job. But the American people are always resilient. They're smart. They look at information. They weigh it. They talk to people. And they see what we all see.
Is America too big to fail, man?
I don't think America will fail. I think we've got some challenges. But we're up to the task. We've always handed the country off to the next generation a little bit better than we found it, and I think we're going to do that again.
Is there a huge millennial voice in Washington right now? Are the younger people chiming in? Or is it just the older folks that have time to grumble?
This class was the first class that I think it's the largest millennial and Gen Z class ever.
Good.
So millennials are starting to get elected. I think we had one or two Gen Zs in there. So younger people are starting to kind of pick up the mantle of public service and jump into the arena.
And what side of the fence do they usually land on?
It's honestly both sides. I mean, you've got a lot of younger folks.
I'll give you that. You're younger, Russell.
If compared to the average age of Washington, I'm probably on the younger end of that. I would guess.
You're a baby.
Yeah, you're a freshman, man.
But so they're starting to get engaged.
It is that time, and as much as I hate it, but you have two gentlemen that are running for president that are very up there in age. One can't walk, the other one's sharp as a tack. But it's time for that next generation to come out and say, it is our turn. It's time to hand over the baton and let us lead. And that's why we love you being up in Washington, because you are the future of this country, the future of this state that can help lead us with the right ideas. But we are going to have to figure out a way to bring everybody back together, because we're so divisive right now, right? And I think it's just, where we've been. You hate Trump or you love Trump, but there's no in between.
Doesn't seem that way.
And we got to figure out a way that we can bring people together, kind of, going back to Reagan and some of the other things like that. Like, how do we bring people back together and have a center? Because right now we don't have a center.
Well, look, I think, one, people will naturally want that. And I think the country is getting there. They're ready for a little bit of that. From a sense of, let's get something done. Look, when it comes to things like China, when it comes to things like the military, a lot of times Republicans and Democrats are largely on the same page. And so there are some issues that I think you work with the other side on. But look, we've got some fundamental differences right now about the direction of this country. Whether we're going to be that shining city on a hill, whether we're going to strive to be a more perfect union, that we're going to allow businesses and families to flourish, or whether we're going to allow that slow and steady decline, but a growth of government. That's the choice I think that we face. And look, politics is messy. It's going to be messy. And it is divisive right now. And maybe our better angels will appeal to us. But again, I think there is a very big choice on the ballot in November when people go. And it's the type of country that we want to lead to the next generation.
I couldn't agree more.
I can't.
It's unbelievable.
Of course, I have my own opinions on the attack of the American family and all these things that are going on. I think at the base of it, though, it's people just continue to be motivated by money or whatever that is, and I hope that there's an end in sight to all the monotony that we see, and just come back to some peace and the American way.
I do too. And look, when Bill Maher is the voice of reason for the left, I mean, you've reached peak craziness. I mean, this is getting there, man.
Is that not the truth?
It is. Like, you watch his show and you look at him and you're like, well, dang, did I just agree with Bill Maher?
I said the same thing, and I'm like, did he just say that?
Right. Well, how many quit? How many of those left media stars were just like, maybe I just don't need to talk anymore or whatnot. I don't know where that motivation came from, but it seems like there's a changing of the guard.
Well, just the idea that you can't express yourself or have a marketplace of ideas, that you have to demonize and cancel and do all these things that the modern left has done. I just look at this and go, we're in a weird spot when he's the voice of reason. For the left.
Mm-hmm.
That's just strange.
It's true.
What's been your favorite thing about Washington and your most shocking thing about Washington?
The favorite thing is the mission, just being there. I mean, you're one of 435 in Congress. Man. You're one of 10,000 people in our country's history that have ever been elected to Congress.
Yeah, man.
And the moment that we face, I think that just it's like, wow, you're here. You can have an impact even at a small level, even as a freshman. And so I love that.
President.
No, don't wish that on me. The shocking thing, I think, is just the people's that they're divorced from reality. We talked about the American flag, the pledge to the flag. We talked about imagining a border crisis. I mean, I just look at people and go, how do you, you could disagree about the border or the flag or whatever, but how do you even live in that reality that you think that that's true?
Yeah.
I would just feel weird if I was like, there's no problem wrong at the border. We're just going to cover that up. Well, by every metric, there's a problem at the border.
Sure. And that I can see that being weird. Like you're dealing with people on a daily basis that, how could they agree with Hunter Biden? I mean, how do they side with that, Russell? I don't understand.
Well, the goalposts move, and that's when you know you're onto something, because forever they blocked it. They said, we're not going to, there's nothing there, there's nothing there. Well, guess what? Hunter never talked to his dad about that. Well, that true? Not be true.
That's not true.
We don't have any. We've never received money from China. Joe Biden said that when he was campaigning. That proved not to be true. I've never been involved in, all you're going to see if you get these bank records is Papa John's receipts in Starbucks. That's a direct quote from Jamie Raskin from Maryland.
Come on, man.
Well, that proved not to be true. So, the moving goalposts is you're onto something. The focus is so much clearer right now, and we're going to keep doing that. We're going to let the facts dictate where we go. We're not going to let politics color it. It is what is factual, and but right now, it's kind of interesting to see them struggle to how to answer it. And look, it's so bad that the mainstream media is even having to cover it right now.
They have no choice.
Right.
I mean, think about the removal of reality of leaving that laptop at that shop. What is wrong with this guy, man?
Oh my gosh.
Well, there's a lot more coming out. If
you're involved with those types of things, and it is America, whatever, man. But you don't put it. You don't leave it there.
Well, I just think
you erase come on.
I just think it's weird that all that stuff is on a laptop.
That's what I'm saying. How do you be so removed from reality to think you're that untouchable?
Yeah.
And then it doesn't turn on, so you have to get it fixed. No, you burn it.
They did.
It's unbelievable to me, man.
They don't get in too much trouble, do they?
Well, it seems that they're in trouble. That's what I mean. It seems that it's on the national news, and they cannot be sleeping well.
So Russell, let's and we'll switch, and we won't keep you too long.
Yeah,
we've kind of covered the gamut today.
That's our plan, man.
What do you think about? So the Feds are wanting to get inflation down to 2%. Okay. And in order to do that, we've had to raise interest rates. And I know that the prices, we do different things like that the prices would get a little out there, and they're coming back down. Do you think that by raising interest rates is actually helping the economy or hurting the economy?
I think it hurts the economy. But we have to remember why we're here. We are here because we print money constantly without any budgetary guardrails. Every economist in the world told the Biden administration, look, you can't dump all this money on the marketplace right now. It's going to cause inflation. There's going to be tremendous inflationary pressure when you do that. Well, they did it anyway.
I sure did.
The $3 trillion bill.
Three.
No, the original one, as Kevin McCarthy was taking over, that the Senate approved. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
That to me is what caused a lot of these problems.
Correct.
Am I wrong about that?
I think that the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, all this stuff, there might be some good policy in those pieces of bills.
There was some relief needed,
but it's so much money all at once. So we know spending causes inflation.
Yeah.
We also know that the lack of production of energy in this country causes inflation.
Yeah.
And so when middle-class Americans, people on fixed incomes, when they are looking at the price of gas, when eggs are considered a delicacy, when you can't afford to go out, when you can't afford to put that extra $10 in the plate or go on a family vacation, these are all the natural results of just where we are, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
And
we're
so
just swiping cards.
to tamp it down, they had to raise interest rates. But again, this was all foreseeable. In my opinion, it was foreseeable.
Obvious.
You can't keep doing this.
Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars given to all of us, right? I mean, they gave it to everybody.
Yeah.
It's just insanity. And to think, so is there a fix to this? Can we open the pipelines back up and fix the energy crisis?
No, not with this administration. They're closing them.
Yeah, but if they did open them, let's say they
did.
wanted to win the election in 2024, and they're like, oh, you know what? By the way, we're going to fix this.
Right.
Watch this over the next 6 months. We're going to open up the pipelines. We're going to get the interest rates back down to normal.
Yeah, so we passed the Lower Energy Cost Act, which actually deals with permits, permitting reform. It deals with opening domestic production, pipelines, and all this stuff. That will lower energy costs, which will help address inflation. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it will do.
That's my opinion too. That if you can fix that, because that's such a humongous industry, and I think we all understand that there's a place for electric vehicles, but it's not Come on, we're not in a spot yet.
Well,
man.
I was listening and going back. I obviously love Elon Musk.
You do.
But he said you still have to have these grids, and then your power stations, they're not operating 24/7. They're not operating to the full capacity of what they possibly can, and that we will have an energy problem, and that he's not against the oil and the gas, because you have to have that if you're going to make a grid in order to handle all these EV cars, right?
Which I think there's a place for.
And there's a place for it, but our grid is not up to standard.
And that's coming from the person that makes them, right? The person that can profit the most is saying, look, slow this down a little bit.
It's not up to standard. And we have an energy problem in this country. And I also believe that we have a Chinese problem with in our own backyard. I was having my son's birthday party over at my house down the street. You've been there. And it was about the most entertaining birthday party because we had a Chinese balloon.
Oh my goodness, man!
That came over and I told everybody that was there. I said, "Well, this is free for y'all." We cued it, and when they sent that missile in there to blow that thing up, and we're sitting there watching it in my backyard, like literally right here. I'm like, wow.
I have never seen warplanes flying over the beach to attack something on our beaches.
Circling until they got out there and it's like, bam. And then you hear on the news that, well, there's scuba divers near our subs and they've broken into the, our bases or, crossing that. What are your thoughts on, like, our reaction of the Chinese buying land, doing all these different things? Do we not have a strong enough policy?
No, we don't. And we've been slow. We've been disastrously slow. China is an emerging threat. We trade with them a lot. Everyone trades with them a lot, but they're an emerging threat. They've said who they are. They said what they want to do. I was just in Taiwan, and they live in the shadow of a communist regime all the time. And Chinese warships or airplanes, they will come into Taiwanese space. When we were there were 7 members of Congress there. There were 7 airplanes that flew into Taiwan space when we were there.
Wow! And
so they're from an economic perspective, they want to be the best. From a military perspective, they want to be the best. They want to be involved in everything. They are telling us who they are, and we need to wise up. We need to make sure that Taiwan is ready to defend themselves if that ever comes. Hopefully it doesn't ever come.
Sure.
But it's less likely to occur if Taiwan's able to defend themselves. So we have to further, like when they buy weapon systems from us, we have to send them those. These 2-year delays, 3-year delays is unacceptable. And we have to wake up. Look, when China has a police office in this country, I'm going to shut down. But when they have a police presence in this country, what? This is the United States.
In New York, right?
Yeah, they had like a little.
They had like a little
kiosk.
Yeah.
Like what? This is
insane.
It's
unbelievable.
We need to wake up. China is not our ally. They're not our friends. They've proven that over and over again. They're doing everything they can to undermine the West and the United States.
Yes.
Europe, France wants to play footsie with them. I think at their detriment. But others, I think, are waking up to this reality. And so our partnerships are so important on the world stage. And domestically, look, they don't need to be buying farmland or land next to military installations like they've done. They don't need to be funding some of our colleges. They don't need to be doing, there's no space in this country. When you are our chief rival and you make no bones about it, you don't have any business investing that type of infrastructure in this country.
Amen to that. And we're covering a lot of stuff today.
That's good.
That's good. All right, so I want to ask you about Ukraine. And so we keep on sending more and more money to Ukraine, yet we cannot stop our southern border.
That's kind of the American way.
And I think this week another $1 billion or whatever was sent to Ukraine. And I understand a little bit of why we don't want Russia to win, right? But do you think that is money well spent?
No, I don't. Look, Russia's a bad actor.
Yeah.
They invaded a sovereign country, and I think I hope that they lose. But I also question our level of involvement. What's the scope of our involvement? What's the cost? What's considered a victory? We don't know any of those questions, answers to those questions. Why isn't Europe investing more? They need to have a bigger seat at the table. Why do we continue to fund operations? What's the end game look like? We have people who are homeless in this country, veterans, that we're not taking care of. I mean, we've got a lot of problems in this country. Why do we continue to invest all this money when we don't know the scope of what we're doing? And one of the biggest things to me is, Joe Biden fired, kind of prosecutor fired, right? And his son was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company that did not want to get looked at.
How much involvement does this all have with that?
And so how does this, until that question is answered, until we have audits, until we have a clear scope of what we're actually doing or trying to accomplish, I'm not going to support sending more aid to Ukraine.
Well, it seems to me, though, by the time you have audits and everything in the way that the speed that the federal government works, it'll be 10 years from now.
Yeah. We just don't know the answer to these questions. And again, I hope that they are successful. I think Europe certainly has a role to play here, but dang, we've got so many of our own problems.
Yeah.
And then to not have an idea of where the money went when it was sent over there, to not know what is considered victory and not. Is this just a perpetual gravy train for Ukraine? I mean, again, I don't know. I don't know the answer to these questions. And the American people don't know. And until we get a handle on that, I don't think we have any business continuing to. We've given them $114 billion. Wow. That's insane.
That's unbelievable.
How's your time in Myrtle Beach been, man?
Hold on. Let me jump on you one more time. I'm sorry. We only got you for a short amount of time.
Sure, we've been here half a day.
And
We're getting there.
But they're looking to replace the dollar as kind of the world currency.
Oh man!
And you have Saudi Arabia, Russia, China,
Brazil,
and all these people together working in order to do that. I wanted to know your thoughts of that. Is that something that's doable? How do we counteract that? How does that, because if that happens to us, right, that will devalue this country tremendously and all the people and your constituents, all over. What do we do to fight that? And then is there, what has to happen?
Well, there's a lot, and I think it's actually a pretty dangerous time from a currency standpoint. That's going to be a big problem. Combating that's a big problem. You've got two of the biggest economies that fall under the BRICS alliance, if you will. And I think it's bad for the dollar. I think it's ultimately bad for the American taxpayers, the American people, for businesses. And so to combat that, you have to provide value back to the dollar. You have to show that we can lead on the world stage. And quite frankly, between our excessive spending and who we have in the White House, we're not showing that at all.
Energy can do that? Could we do that with our own oil base?
I think you could, actually. But again, I hate relying on other countries and their
That's
winnings.
right.
And if we could produce here,
Which we can.
look, when an American president goes to Saudi Arabia, who we've given tons of money to, and they're a stabilizing force in the Middle East, and there's differences
kinda
there.
working.
But when he goes there hat in hand and asks them to produce more, and not only do they say no, but they cut production,
We got problems.
Hey,
that's how we're viewed right now.
Remember when Trump went to Saudi Arabia? The welcome that he got.
Oh yeah.
I mean, remember that?
Yeah.
It was the biggest to do. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then this
guy.
I shouldn't say this guy, our president,
The president.
our
There is
current
some respect
president,
there still. Yeah,
our
should
current president shows up. It's night and day.
That's a joke.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, we'll lighten it up a little bit, Russell.
Yeah.
You're at the beach. You having a good time, man? Is it good to be home?
That's been good to be home. Well, first of all, I had a laundry list like a mile long that I needed to start to attack, so we were able to do some stuff with that. But it's been good to be home. I like being back. All the sexy stuff is the stuff we just talked about in DC, what's going on in DC. But man, when you can help, we had a lady the other day. Her husband was a veteran. He had passed away, And she was owed some money by the federal government. And her husband was. And she tried forever to try to get it done herself, and she was getting the runaround. We got her $100,000.
Changed it for her.
And that's just
Oh, wow.
life-changing. And then you just think about that. Like, if somebody's in front of you, and it's because they've got nowhere else to go, and your job is, whether it's a passport issue, a VA issue, whatever the case is, like, we try to provide that level of service to people.
Yeah,
and that's
man.
who we serve. That's our boss, is the people of this district. So,
That's why we love you, dude.
yeah, man. I just love stories like that because it's just really cool, and passport stuff's been a disaster, but particularly the veteran stuff when they're trying to get their medical records and they're having problems with that. Like, how is that a problem? How can you not get your medical records?
Yeah.
But they can't because the VA won't give them to them. And so to chase that down and they're like, we've been fighting this battle for 3 years. Thank you. Like, that's the best part of my job.
That's
But it's been good to be home too.
Very
Bouncing
cool.
around and seeing people. Yeah.
So tell us where all your offices are
Yeah.
and things like that.
How we can help you get reelected, man. 'Cause
Yeah.
we need more people like you up there.
Oh, thank you, man. So one in DC, obviously. We got one in Surfside Beach. It's right there on Business 17, across from the Methodist Church. And we got one in Florence in the Truist Bank building. So
Right.
we're everywhere. We're open, I think, 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Call us, text us, email us, carrier pigeon if you want to do that. Fax machine. We think we still
You got
have
a fax over there?
I think we still have fax capabilities.
You gotta take it to your constituent.
And for the folks that may know or may not know, tell us the counties that you cover.
Yes, 8 counties.
in your district.
Yep, so it's Horry, Georgetown, Dillon, Marion, Marlboro, Chesterfield, Florence, and Darlington.
Okay.
I think that's 8. Yeah.
It's a big place, man. That's a lot of shoes to go through.
Oh yeah, well
You're going through some tires.
we went through and tires. We've been I think in every single county in the last month. We go in, and yesterday I was in Effingham, I was in Darlington, and I was in McBee when we came home.
On a micro level, how can we help you? What can
I think just
people that
keep
are listening do for you, man?
No, thank you. Just keep spreading the word. Get engaged. Look, we got a country to fix, and it happens at a local level. It happens at a state level. It happens at a federal level. We need good public servants in office. We need good public servants that are pushing. And now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. It's time to get engaged in the process.
And so if somebody wanted to help you out, or what are the best websites? What's the best contact numbers and things
And
like that?
we'll list all that stuff out.
Yeah, but tell us the best way to get in contact.
Yeah,
with you.
so follow us on Twitter, Truth, Facebook, Instagram. We're on all of those. It's at Russell Fry SC. And then check out our website, russellfrysc.com. Get engaged, volunteer, donate.
And when's the next election?
Next November.
Yeah, it's
Maybe
a pretty
June.
big one, man.
We'll
So
see.
we need to vote for Russell Fry for Congress. This is our guy.
Look him up on social media. Support
Social
him.
media, our guy in this town, the Congressman Russell Fry. Thank you so much for being here, brother.
We'll be here to help, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for getting here, man.
Yeah.
Signing off here from Coastal Wave Podcast. We'll check you on the next episode.
The next episode.